Open a Budweiser and pour yourself the most inviting glass of beer you've ever tasted.
Sure.
Cold, golden Budweiser with that good taste for good times. So go ahead. Live life, every golden minute of it. Enjoy Budweiser. Every golden drop of it.
Budweiser beer is for folks who know where there's life. Where there's life.
Go ahead.
Sure.
Where there's life, there's Bud.
We do about 10 million barrels a year in this facility. So one barrel is 2 kegs at the store. So on average, we could probably do about 250,000 barrels per week. That's a pretty decent week. I'm the senior brewmaster at the Los Angeles Brewery, and I make Budweiser. So I'm in charge of both the quality and the financial aspects of the beer that we make. So I manage a team of about 100 people that their sole responsibility is to make beer. We make about 26 different brands here at the brewery, which is continuing to grow. My job is to ensure that both the quality of the beer, the taste of the beer, and then financially that we're feasible. My entire staff comes up here and we taste every single part of the process. So we'll taste the grain that comes in, we'll taste all the water that's used in the process, we taste the alpha beer, we taste the secondary fermentation, we taste everything that's been filtered that day, and we taste everything that's been packaged that day. So it's a very long process. So for Budweiser alone, we could talk about that one, it's easy. It's a 30-day process from start to finish. So we take 2 row malt and rice, and we make a mash out of it. What you're trying to do in that is you're trying to extract sugars, actually trying to break down sugars into fermentable sugars. And those are the sugars that the yeast actually gets to eat in order to create alcohol. So if you didn't break down the sugars into fermentable sugars, the yeast would have nothing to eat and you wouldn't create alcohol. So from the mash, you strain out the liquid from the and that is called wort. So think about, the mash cooker is your like oatmeal or porridge, and then the lauter tub is the next step. That's kind of like a coffee filter. So you're taking all the liquid and draining it through the malt that's left over and extracting all the sugars from it, and then you take it to the boiling process, which is you boil the wort. And that's where you both sterilize the wort, but also add the ingredients. So in terms of Budweiser, that's where we add our hops. So we add our hops in 3 different positions. You have a flavor hop, and then you have 2 different sets of aroma hops. So as it goes later into the boiling process, it's more of aroma and less of a flavor. So the flavor impact is the first at the beginning of boil, and then the aroma hops are later. So from there, we separate it out, and then we send it to a cooler, and we cool it down from 210 degrees down to 52 degrees. At that point, we get it ready to pitch the yeast into it. So it's a lager beer, so it's a bottom fermented yeast. It's a cold fermentation process. So you pitch the yeast, you fill up the fermenter, and then it ages for 5 days. And what it's doing in the aging process is it's taking all those sugars, the yeast is eating all those sugars and converting it into alcohol. And it also produces a CO2 that we collect. So from there, after 5 days, after the yeast has eaten all the sugars and create all the alcohol, we move it over to secondary fermentation where it ages for 21 days. And in Budweiser's case, it's a beechwood aging process. So we have beechwood chips that basically create a complex layer at the bottom of the chip tank. It allows the yeast, when it's done doing its job, to settle out on and come out of suspension. Where if you didn't have the beechwood aging, you just have the sludge at the bottom of the tank, where the beechwood chips allow different surface areas for it to come. And during the secondary fermentation, which is unique to a lager versus an ale, and during secondary fermentation, you're aging for 21 days at 52 degrees, and you're bringing out all the buttery notes, the cooked strawberry notes. So that's how true fermentation happens. After 21 days, we separate out the yeast, and then we filter the beer. So we use a tannin component that grabs the proteins, takes them out of suspension, and then filters that out. We filter out anything, and that's where you end up with a nice clear beer. We adjust it with adjusted water to package specs. That's where the alcohol calorie comes into play, and then we release it to packaging.
The brewers bring us samples, particularly on this job. This is called the finishing alkalizer job because these machines are called the alkalizers. So the brewers bring us our samples, and they could be anywhere from Stockhouse 6, or finishing, or from fermenting, or package samples. We pretty much run a good variety of samples, and they're run on these machines. We filter them, we temperate them first, 68 to 72 degrees, or 70 degrees is the target. And they get filtered in these Erlenmeyer flasks, and then gassed and transferred into vials, and then the machine just analyzes it for us. And we look for beer that's within or out of spec. And then our job is to report it to the brewers, and they're our customers. So we provide them with whatever information they need as soon as possible. So sometimes the lines are down and they're waiting for a really important sample, and those obviously become our highest priority, and then we work from there. And then sometimes there may be whole beer that we need to process. Actually, I'm doing some right now. It's block beer, possibly a beer mix, meaning there could be water within that beer. So we have to process it, analyze it, and then verify if it is or not, and then we distinguish whether or not it's a variety of samples. And they're run on, well, we separate them first, 68 to 70.
I work for Anheuser Busch Industries, and I make Lime-A-Rita. Well, the first thing we do is make sure that we have enough product to supply the bottle shop with their requirements, because they have certain brands, Cran-Barita, Straw-Barita, that they're going to actually run in the bottle shop. So we actually plan our day according to what they want over there. We're a week out, actually. We're a week ahead. We have to make sure we have enough product in-house to produce for the bottle shop, and that's how we start our day, making sure that the bottle shop's happy. So we have many ingredients that come in totes, strawberry, mango, raspberry, and the list is getting longer and longer. These are the actual injection points that I was speaking of here. So you got a pump, and each brand has a recipe, and it calls for a certain amount of extract for that recipe. So we control the amounts on the setup screen here. We actually have a setup screen. We pull up the recipe and put in all the numbers and all the ratios, and the recipe knows what to do, and the pumps take off. And we go ahead and monitor all the injection points, make sure that they're not leaking, or make sure that they're meeting their set points and everything.
So water is obviously very important to us, but it takes water to make beer. So we have metrics in place. So right now we're at about 3 hectoliters per hectoliter. So we measure how much water it takes in order to make a hectoliter of beer. And then we take a look at how much water do we need to use in order to clean that vessel. As a brewery as a whole, we're looking at different reuse issues. We're looking at what we can put back into the system clean. We've done a huge amount of dry scaping around the system. As you walked in, I don't know if you guys saw that we have artificial grass. We went to California native plants. We went to rocks. We went to succulents. That alone makes a big difference. I think we saved like 5 million gallons there. We have an ETI initiative. So what we do is we ask the brewers, and we offer them money for any water savings idea. And then we add an extra 10% bonus on that. So it's a lot of practices. Are we going to hose the ground, or are we going to sweep the floor? Where can we save water? And then the brewers can actually make an additional bonus off of that.
We go through great lengths to preserve our jobs here. We save every drop we can, and it's very critical to our process that we don't waste water. We adjust some of our header packs and some of our other processes to make sure that we're not overusing water.